Arnab Goswami on the debate at 10. Presented by Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3 5G. Powered by Reva University, Green Lamb and Softovac.
And ladies and gentlemen, Modi and Biden are meeting and both world leaders are laid out their roadmap for what promises to be a new chapter in India-America ties. Big takeaway for me was where President Joe Biden spoke about an equal relationship. It is clear that Prime Minister Modi, is projecting India as an assertive nation, meeting the U.S. as an equal partner. You also heard the U.S. President saying both nations are, quote, taking on some of the toughest challenges together. And he specifically mentions the Indo-Pacific. So the message is clear, no counter-movement on China is possible without India. And there's one more point I wanted to make here. It's about playing a global role. India is a global player. And I think we'll wait for the joint statement for what happens in terms of putting some of those thoughts on paper. But here's a short report. When they met, the first comments they made. Let's hear in case you missed it.
The Modi-Biden meeting re-emphasizes the deep engagement that is taking place between the BJP-led Modi government in New Delhi and the new Washington, D.C. establishment led by the Democrats.
I think that the relationship between India and the United States, the largest democracies in the world, is destined to be stronger, closer, and tighter, and I think it can benefit the whole world. And I think that's begun to come to pass, and today we're launching a new chapter in the history of U.S.-Indian ties and taking on some of the toughest challenges we faced together, starting with a shared commitment to ending the COVID pandemic. Prime Minister and I were going to be talking today about what more we can do to fight COVID-19, take on the climate challenges that the world face, and ensure stability in Indo-Pacific, including with our own Quad partners. Of course, our partnership is more than just what we do. It's about who we are. It's rooted in our shared responsibility to uphold democratic values, our joint commitment to diversity, and it's about family ties, including 4 million Indian Americans who make the United States stronger every single day.
2016 में और 2014 में भी मुझे आपसे विस्तार से बात करने का मौका मिला था और उस समय आपने भारत अमेरिका के संबंधों का आपका जो विजन है जिसको आपने शब्दबद्ध किया था वो वाकई बहुत ही प्रेरक था और आज आप राष्ट्रपति के रूप में उस विजन को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए जो पुरुषार्थ कर रहे हैं, प्रयास कर रहे हैं, इनिशिएटिव ले रहे हैं, इसका मैं स्वागत करता हूँ। एक्सेलेंसी, आज की हमारी ये बायलैटरल समिट, लेकिन मैं देख रहा हूँ कि ये दशक 21वीं शताब्दी के तीसरे दशक का ये पहला वर्ष, मैं पूरे दशक की तरफ देख रहा हूँ कि आपके नेतृत्व में जो बीज हम बोएंगे, इस पूरा दशक हमारी दृष्टि से बहुत ही भारत और अमेरिका के संबंध में, विश्व के लोकतांत्रिक देशों के लिए एक बहुत ही ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव ये कालखंड रहेगा, ऐसा मेरा विश्वास है।
The mood here in DC is quite clear. The Biden administration wants strong and enduring ties with the Modi government and India. The back-to-back bilaterals and multilaterals are proof of that. The fear-mongering by a certain lobby within has come to a naught.
Abhishek is live from outside the White House. Abhishek, how's it gone? It's gone beyond the Abhishek, it's gone beyond the the scheduled time. What do you make of that? Okay, so no, I think Abhishek is live on our Hindi channel. Let's hear him anyway for a while.
उनके कार्यक्रम को डिस्टर्ब करने की कोशिश की गई है। खालिस्तानी लोग कुछ आ गए हैं। मेट्रोपॉलिटन पुलिस ने एक सिक्योरिटी रिंग बना दी है बीच में और भारतीय नागरिक यहाँ पे उनको
Okay, we can. Okay, so we'll be coming back to Abhishek in just a bit. He was live on the Hindi channel. Welcoming on our panel right now Vijay Chautaiwale, who's in charge of the Foreign Affairs Department of the BJP, Sushant Sareen, Gaurav Arya. Atma Trivedi is Managing Director of Hills and Company. He's a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Paul Goebel is a former special advisor to the Secretary of State. Dov Zakim, former Undersecretary of Defense in the George Bush administration. Abdul Samad Yaqub, spokesperson for Pakistan's ruling party, the PTI, and Raja Faisal. We are all live here tonight. May I start with you? Sushant, interesting engagement. I'm sure you saw the opening remarks. They broke the ice a bit. It went beyond just being polite to each other. They were comfortable. And I think that matters, Sushant.
Yeah, you're right. I think the chemistry was pretty good. And all the naysayers and doomsday scenario painters, I think all of that has collapsed, that Biden will come in and I don't know what will happen between India and the United States. I think that fictitious propaganda has simply collapsed today. That was one. Secondly, I think the chemistry was pretty good. And both sides, I think, showed a degree of maturity in at least in the opening remarks, talking about issues which matter to them and which actually further their, the strategic partnership. I'm sure there will be some quibbling that why wasn't Afghanistan mentioned, by the usual suspects. But I'm sure some of those issues are likely to come up, not in front of the cameras, but when both the leaders would be talking behind closed doors. And of course, in the other confabulations which would be taking place between the Indians and the Americans. So no issues on that. My only one issue on which I think we might be jumping the gun is on what the Foreign Secretary said about what the U.S. Vice President said about Pakistan and that we've asked them to do more and stuff like that. The reason for my skepticism, Arnab, is that the Americans have been asking the Pakistanis to do more for the last 30 years. And look where it has brought us. Frankly, I think the Americans need to do more than just say do more. And they need actually to think up
impose a degree of compellence on the Pakistanis because the nuisance value of Pakistan aside, the vulnerabilities of Pakistan are very, very serious and severe. And I'm sure the Americans, with all their scholarship and all their intelligence, know of it. And yet that reluctance which is there in taking that action against the Pakistanis is something which I find extremely puzzling. So I would hope that, going forward, India and America can cooperate on this particular issue, because for us, terrorism is a frontline issue. It's on our borders. It's not something which affects maybe the Americans and the Japanese and the Australians in the same way that it impacts upon us. So we just simply can't touch it under the carpet. So I think that is something which we need to talk about.
You made a point there, Sushant, about some lobbies in India that and elsewhere also, in Pakistan, elsewhere, some of the usual suspects saying that after the Biden administration comes in, the distance between India and America will grow. Far from it. I mean, I've never believed so, because countries come together on a common agenda. They come together when they have things in common. And I think the important thing here is, at the end of the day, real politic. Before I come to you, Abhishek, I'd like to go to Paul Goebel. Real politic. Two strong nations come together. What's the common agenda? I think first, Paul, we have a common anti-China agenda. We have both tightened our strategic interests to counter China's muscle flexing in the Indo-Pacific region. We have a common agenda against terrorism, a common agenda on the AFPAC region, We have a common agenda on trade, right? And we have a common agenda on defense, on military strategy. So I think there's a lot that we have in common. What do you think, Paul? What do you think is the significance of today's meeting?
I think the by the president was that we are the two largest democracies in the world, and that is the basis for cooperation and for a common agenda. And it goes much beyond even the long lists that you just gave. I think it's terribly important to understand that with the American withdrawal from Afghanistan, the role and influence of Pakistan on American calculations is much reduced. We no longer have to rely on Pakistan as a supply route into Afghanistan, and that opens the way to greater cooperation between the United States and India with respect to Pakistan, and greater American pressure on Pakistan to behave better than it has. As long as we were dependent on Pakistan as a supply route into Afghanistan, there were limits to what could be done. But with the war in Afghanistan now over from the American perspective, the influence that the Pakistanis have on American foreign policy has much reduced, and that opens new possibilities for cooperation with India. And I would expect to see movement in that area in the coming weeks. And that will be something that I believe will push forward U.S.-Indian ties more generally.
Absolutely, and Paul, 100% agree with you on that. I want to get a view from Atman Trivedi also, who's associated with the Atlantic Council, and he's managing director of Hills and Company. Atman, I think the point that Paul made, our Pakistani guests are beginning to squirm. The spokesperson of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is looking upset. But I think the point needs to be made, Mr. Trivedi, that today Pakistan has no leverage. Because, how do I put it? Pakistan is an unimportant nation. As in, it was always an unimportant nation, but it had an exaggerated sense of self-importance, given the fact that some of the land routes, through Pakistan were used by American forces or anyone who had a long-term strategic interest in Pakistan. The only ones who have a long-term strategic interest in Afghanistan today are the Taliban. So I think the whole equation changes right now. And that, as Paul said, really opens up a new vista of India-America relationship. Atman?
Thank you, Arnab. I agree with Paul that the situation has changed on the ground. The U.S. is less dependent on Pakistan with its troops now out of Afghanistan. It was previously relying on Pakistan for several land routes to supply and prosecute the war effort in Afghanistan. That now has changed and led to diminished leverage on the part of Pakistan. At the same time, I think the security establishment in Rawalpindi is trying to show that it does exert influence over the new regime. Post-Taliban takeover, we saw the ISI chief very ostentatiously pop into Afghanistan for tea. And I think it was designed to send a message that Pakistan still exerts control, still has significant influence over affairs in Afghanistan. And I think part of the message is that a peaceful, stable Afghanistan that is not an exporter of extremism depends in part on the Pakistan role in the country. However much we may dislike that reality, both India and the United States.
Yes. So Abdul Samad Yaqub, you're hearing it from Washington tonight. Abhishek is there also with us. Abhishek, the meeting went a little longer than was scheduled. What do you make of that? Abhishek from outside the White House.
Well, Arnab, yes. So, in fact, I must admit that I was a little distracted with the events outside. First, the cultural events that were taking place to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi and to kind of showcase a mini India here outside the northern lawns of the White House. And now there is a bit of an attempt at disruption, perhaps backed by Pakistan, because the Khalistani protesters are here and there is a duel happening with the Indian community rebutting and responding with equal aggression with sloganeering. So coming back to the substantive part, Arnab, in terms of the dialogue that took place, the bilateral meeting that took place between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, we are told the atmosphere was cordial. So it calls the bluff of a certain lobby that there are some issues between a Democrat administration in Washington, D.C. and the Modi government in New Delhi. So that's been paid to rest now, finally, I think, with this little longish meeting that went on about the whole gamut of issues. We are told that Pakistan's role in terror was specifically discussed, preparation for which was effectively made by the comments of Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday, which were, or not, remember we were told, were suo motu, as in it was not at the Indian instance or initiative that Afghanistan, and in the context of Afghanistan, the role of Pakistan was discussed. So the Americans are very clear that what Pakistan is doing in Afghanistan amounts to hijacking a government for its own objectives and to harbor terror organizations. The only problem is that there are certain Americans still stuck there, citizens of other friendly nations still stuck inside Afghanistan, and that's why I think some kind of indulgence with Pakistan is happening for the time being. Once this is over, obviously, the Riot Act would be read to Pakistan is what we are getting to know about the meeting that took place. Apart from that, of course, India-America partnership goes beyond these immediate topical issues. So all those things, including, for example, cooperation in space technology, cooperation in semiconductor and other new emerging technologies like the artificial intelligence and cloud computing, and wherever there can be long-lasting business partnerships to complement the cooperation or supplement the cooperation that is taking place between the two governments. Everything was discussed on the table, but my takeaway, I would say that there is an understanding and unanimity between the two sides that at some stage very soon, Pakistan would need to be read the Riot Act on terror and its support of terror, and I think that's going to happen or not anytime soon.
Oh yes, absolutely. It's a matter of time. And let me tell you, it's not only India and America who will read the Riot Act to Pakistan, the whole world is. Pakistan has become a little bit of an unnecessary pinprick. But the important thing is, let's come to smaller countries like Pakistan later. The fact is, viewers, as you see the pictures, and I want to go to Vijay Chautaiwale right now. He heads the Foreign Affairs Department of the BJP. You know, Vijay, what comes to my mind is this, that this is what international relationships are about. And you handle foreign affairs for the BJP. Maybe you can make the point to your counterpart from the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf that when real countries, big countries, talk at a macro level, you know, it's about business, trade, economy, technology, artificial intelligence, climate change, foreign direct investment, equity participation, intelligence sharing. That's the kind of conversation that happens, you know. And that's where Pakistan always gets left out. But Vijay, why don't you tell them to get real? You know, when big countries talk, they talk strategy. And what is happening in the White House today is the grand strategy of the region, where Pakistan doesn't really matter much anymore, as some of our American panelists like Paul said. What would you say to Mr. Abdul Samad Yaqub? Should he acknowledge it? Should people like him continue to be bitter? Should he just acknowledge that things have changed? Things have changed. They have to shape up now.
This question should have been asked to one of the Pakistani participants. Arnab?
Let me reply. Let me respond.
Yeah.
You have right.
Let me respond.
Yeah.
This is not the matter of, this is the matter of rising power China and the vanishing power America. India will sooner or later realize that India was standing with the wrong side of the history. Let me tell you how. No matter you form a Quad or AUKUS, no matter what regional blocks or strategic blocks you form, it will be irrelevant because now the America is going to restart that classical Cold War doctrine, but this time she's going to confront with the China, the supersized economy, and you are dependent on China because now currently your trade balance is $100 billion, which Prime Minister Modi want to increase and want to reach it to the level of the $500 billion. And by the way, China has already condemned this Quad, not just condemned the Quad, but already put the sanctions on Australia. I mean, now Australia, which is the largest business partner of trade partner of the China, is under the sanctions of the China, and Japan is the second one. China is the second largest trade power of the Japan, and soon Japan is going to face the sanctions from China. And when China imposes sanctions on India, India will no longer afford the sanctions from the China. So
for 1 minute, Abdul Samad Yaqub. Mr. Yaqub, 1 minute.
I really appreciate his confidence.
Vijay is laughing. Yeah, you can respond to him. I just wanted to add one thing, Vijay, before you respond to him.
On behalf of
Abdul Samad Yaqub, the problem with Abdul Samad Yaqub, Vijay. Yeah, go on. Why don't you make your point? I'll come in later. Yeah.
I wonder if Mr. Yaqub is talking on behalf of Islamabad or on behalf of Beijing. But more they blur their boundary, more they identify with each other, better to know with the rest of the country, rest of the world where they stand for. All these threats of sanctions against big country like Australia, Japan and India is simply a laughable stock. Chinese economy depend on the exports to this country. And therefore, if these countries are sanctioned by China, it will be Chinese economy that will be hurt more than this country because the other options will be opened as the new supply chain options are being created, which will bypass China. And therefore, this daydreaming that Islamabad somehow will shoot on the shoulders of China to bring down their enemy's economy is simply, it's a daydreaming and quite laughable, to be honest with you. Arnab.
You know, since a long time, we've been Pakistani.
Gaurav, I see your hand go up. 1 minute.
Because we are the ones.
1 minute.
For a long time.
1 minute. A problem with Mr. Yaqub is
something about Paul.
Mr. Yaqub.
Allow me to talk.
Raja, I have something to say to you.
Paul had to say earlier.
Raja, I have something to say to you.
Yeah,
I wish to say something to you.
Something about Paul.
The problem is that in the opening remarks of the ruling party spokesperson of Pakistan, Mr. Abdul Samad Yaqub, it became clear to me that most unfortunately, Gaurav, he has come without doing adequate research once again. Today I was hoping, at least today, maybe for the first time, I was hoping against hope that the man would come prepared with some research. He says that China, we need China, we want to trade with China, we want to talk to China, we want to eat Chinese food, we want to learn Chinese, we love China. I just want to know from Raja Faisal, please tell me, Raja, which is the biggest trading partner of Pakistan? I repeat the question so you can understand it well. Who is Pakistan's biggest trading partner, and hence who has the most clout over you?
Why you have problem with Pakistan loving China? What if I say I love India? Do you have problem with that? No. I love China, I love India, I love every country.
I have a problem with that. I won't take it well.
I love every country of the world.
No, what is my question? My question is, which country... My question is, viewers, which country has the most clout over Pakistan? Which country, if it wants, can bring Pakistan down to its knees economically? And that will be a country with whom Pakistan has a grave trading imbalance and continues to be the biggest trading partner of Pakistan. Which is that country? Raja Faisal, tell me, tell Gaurav, which is that country?
Well, there are certain countries. Pakistan has very good relations in terms of economy, and China is one of them. And
certain countries, your largest trading partner, Raja Faisal, is the United States of America. Your trade with America is twice that of your trade with China. So, just be a little careful about what you're talking about. Gaurav, he doesn't understand the way the world works.
Is distancing from us. We are not the ones who are actually distancing from them.
I'll just tell you, Arnab. All right, Raja Faisal, can I come in, please? Can I come in, please, Raja Faisal?
Yes, you can.
The world is distancing from you. The world is distancing from you.
Yes. Arnab, I want to make 2 quick points, if you will. 2 quick points. Number 1, I have seen Pakistanis come here on Republic Media Network and make a case for the Taliban, make a case for China, but never make a case for Pakistan. They're very vociferous when it comes to Taliban, when it comes to China, but never for Pakistan. Arnab, I just want to say, I wrote what Paul said, what Paul said. Very significant. Pakistan is important to the world because Pakistan shares a border with Afghanistan. So does Iran, by the way, but Iran is under sanctions. Iran has a problem with Israel. Iran has a nuclear weapons program that America does not accept. Otherwise, if you look at Pakistan and if you look at Afghanistan, Pakistan's only importance to the world and to America is that Pakistan has a seaport and Pakistan has direct access to Afghanistan. Otherwise, Pakistan does not manufacture. Again, for the 10th time on Republic Media Network, I would like to ask, when was the last time any viewer of Republic Media Network living inside India or abroad ever wore a shirt which said made in Pakistan? Ever wore a pair of shoes that said made in Pakistan? Pakistan produces nothing, absolutely nothing. And their only claim to fame is that they have a border with Afghanistan. Otherwise, nobody bothers about Pakistan. Now the Americans have left Afghanistan.
Let me tell you.
The Americans have left Afghanistan. Raja Faisal, hear me out. I'll just take 10 seconds more. I'll just take 10 seconds more, sir.
The jeans I'm wearing.
Now, I just want to tell you. I just want to tell you. I just want to tell you one thing, Raja Faisal.
It came from
the
Germany,
Americans have left,
and
nobody else, Raja, you took $33 billion from the Americans just to be a chungi naka state. राहदारी दी है सिर्फ आपने, उसके अलावा कोई पाकिस्तान की अहमियत नहीं है. Nobody cares about Pakistan. Please name one reason why the world should come to Pakistan. One reason, apart from the fact that you have a border with Afghanistan. One reason.
You have no research about it.
Please tell me one thing, Raja Faisal. Please tell me. Raja Faisal, please tell me one reason why the world should come to Pakistan. One reason. Raja, if you give me one reason why the world will come to Pakistan, I promise I will keep quiet during the entire debate. मैं पूरी डिबेट में चुप रहूंगा राजा, मैं कुछ नहीं बोलूंगा. मेरा आपको चैलेंज है, खुल के सब लोग देख रहे हैं, करोड़ों लोग देख रहे हैं अर्नब की डिबेट. आप बोलिए कौन सा ऐसा कारण है जिसकी वजह से लोग पाकिस्तान आए, कौन सी वजूहत है? एक वजह बताइए जिसके लिए पाकिस्तान इंपॉर्टेंट है. अगर आप पाकिस्तान को अफगानिस्तान से अलग कर दें, अलग कर दें 1 मिनट के लिए. Please give me one reason, sir.
Are we having
your IT industry, your commerce, your trade, your economy, your stock market, your pharmaceutical industry.
Are we having a debate? Are we having a debate that people should come to Pakistan?
Sir, I'm just asking you one thing. I will keep quiet, I promise you. Raja Faisal, मैं आपको जबान देता हूं सब लोगों के सामने. I promise you in front of all the viewers of the Republic, I will keep shut for the entire duration of the
point is, no, I think the Pakistanis are misunderstanding. I think the Pakistanis, Gaurav, are misunderstanding. No, the Pakistanis are misunderstanding. Viewers, 1 minute, Raja. The Pakistanis are misunderstanding. I want to go back once again. We are waiting a joint statement from both sides, but I want to run the pictures once again of the Prime Minister meeting Joe Biden. And the Pakistanis are misunderstanding. What we need to explain to them is the larger picture of the India-America relationship. That is the point. One, the scale of the relationship, right? Remember, Indian IT companies are contributing $60 billion to the GDP of the US. US FDI to India is crossing the $40-50 billion mark, right? And there were people who were saying, if Raghuram Rajan exits, so will billions in investments. Sorry, after Raghuram Rajan left the RBI, Americans are investing much, much more. In fact, Indian companies are creating hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States. We are accounting for 8% of the employment in computer system design and related services. 8% of the overall investment is coming from Indian private sector. Indian exports have risen by 14%. The diaspora is 4 million, almost 1.5% of the American population, right? These are things that bring the two countries together, right? And Joe Biden has not once communicated or held talks with Pakistan since the withdrawal. Not one phone call to Imran Khan. It's quite clear where they stand. They have not recognized the Taliban. Dov, Zakim, we used to debate a lot on that, disagreed a lot, but Dov, you know, both countries, India and America, have taken a strong stand on the Taliban. And today, when the Taliban gave out a press release saying that we are going to start public executions, amputations in stadiums, like we used to, the need for civilized countries to come together is even stronger. Raja, the question was to Dov. Would you please, every time you hear the word Afghanistan, you step in, would you please let someone else come in, please? Would you please let someone else come in? The question was to Dov.
Thank you.
I think you heard me there, Dov. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. First of all, I totally agree that the relationship with India keeps getting deeper. It is hugely significant that the President of the United States gives literally 50% more of his scheduled time to the Prime Minister of India. What a major message, both for Americans and for Indians. Another point, so much of this is about China. And when I speak to most of my Indian friends, their biggest concern isn't Pakistan. Their biggest concern is China. And once you look at it in those terms, then you see that who's China's best friend in South Asia? It's not India, it's Pakistan. And so I do agree that once we can get all the Americans out and the others who want to get out of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and I had a deal with them, and I have friendships there, but Pakistan's simply going to be less important. Pakistan is not going to help us to deal with Chinese aggression, with Chinese adventurism. It wasn't Pakistan that fought China in the Himalayas. It wasn't Pakistan that's being pushed around in the South China Sea or in the East China Sea. It wasn't Pakistan that China put sanctions on. Look, let's be realistic. There is so much going on just in the defense sector alone. You didn't mention this number, but you could. $20 billion worth of defense trade and going up. Agreements on defense logistics, defense communications.
Yeah.
Only in the last few years. And a new arrangement where the members of the Quad would send 25 students to the United States to study in the high-tech sector. So you've got a completely different level of cooperation here that continues to grow. And oh, by the way, the French, who may have had a small spat with us, and it'll pass, France is very close to India as well. And they're a Pacific partner, and they have nuclear submarines, and they're worried about China. The British are worried about China. The Chinese are simply isolating themselves. And if Pakistan wants to be China's best friend, they're just asking for a problem.
So be it. I think you heard that, Samad. I can tell you one thing. Abdul Samad, I can tell you one thing. You're on screen now. Abdul, I have not prompted Dov to say anything. In fact, Dov and I have fought bitterly in the 4 times he's come earlier on my program.
You might have money, the hard-earned money.
No, it's not about selling arms. Sushant, tell him.
They want to sell their arms to you. That's what they want to do.
Sushant, tell him not to look at things in a shallow manner. No.
Arnab, seriously.
No, don't tell me.
I mean,
don't tell me.
The way they've forward French towards you.
Sushant, tell him.
Seriously.
Sushant, tell him. Sushant, tell him. He's not listening. Sushant.
You have more than 50% population.
No, I can't. I mean, because this guy just keeps slabbing his mouth off. There's no point. These kind of characters dumb down the debate.
And you know what?
Because they have nothing to offer. He's just a heckler. That's what he's doing. He's heckling. So
I think
there's nothing I can say.
But I think the words used are very. The words are okay. So Raja, you are capable.
Come down to the
I never give up on you. You are still capable of an intelligent conversation despite being a Pakistani. You just have to try harder. Sushant. Yes, Sushant, go on.
Yeah, so look, when Duff talks about a $20 billion defense deal, what you miss out is that you have a bilateral trade relationship of $150 billion. This $20 billion defense deal is not an yearly deal, right? This is going to extend over a couple of years. But on an yearly basis, you have $150 billion of trade. Unlike China, which is a predatory economic power, and which only extracts things from which the Pakistanis are now learning. And because the Pakistanis are so deeply in the hawk to the Chinese, they can't even open their mouth because the Chinese are their new sugar daddies. So they've taken these really expensive power projects, which they can't afford. The Chinese are now saying that, listen, where is our money? And these guys have absolutely no money to give to them. So they are on a leveraged kind of a situation with the Chinese itself. They wanted to renegotiate the contracts and the Chinese told them to buzz off. But let us talk about India-U.S. relations. So we have about $150 billion worth of trade. This includes services. This is a year-on-year kind of a thing. The defense deals is a very small component of our larger relationship with the Americans. Now,
of the overall
with the Pakistanis is that they have this entire, their entire worldview is a security-oriented one, in which is what they look at, that how much is the defense trade. The defense trade helps India and the US become closer because it adds to another level of trust between the two countries. But it is not the most important aspect of our relationship. The most important aspect of the relationship is 200,000 to 250,000 Indian students going every year to the US to study. How many Pakistanis go? 5,000. Can you understand what the magnitude is? Then you talk about trade. Now, this is like I was saying earlier. When we trade with the Americans, we might be enjoying a slight surplus in our trade, but it's a very balanced kind of a trade, which is what trade is supposed to be, not the kind of predatory nonsense which the Chinese do, dumping stuff into other countries. Okay? You look at the earlier you were talking about countries having interests. All of that is there. But look, where we are a very good match for the Americans is shared values. Do not underestimate the importance of that. That these are two democracies.
Undermine that, yes.
Rural countries. We have our problems. There is no denying problems in American democracy, problems in Indian democracy. Of course, we will have problems. We are not perfect countries, but at least we aspire for an ideal. We don't aspire for becoming a Talibanized regime, which Pakistanis do. What is Imran Khan's wet dream?
No, I think it's.
Amirul Mominin.
I think.
Nobody wants to become Amirul Mominin in India.
That's the point I want to take to Paul. You know, Paul. Yeah. Abdul, I'll come to you. See, Paul, your comment a little earlier on the program had really set the cat among the pigeons. But I think that you were just speaking from the heart. You said it as it is. You said that the changing geostrategic reality in Afghanistan and the lessening of the American physical presence and engagement in Afghanistan will therefore have a proportional impact on the lessening of Pakistan insofar as America's game is concerned, and hence opens up possibilities with India. I think you were just stating it as it was. The Pakistanis have taken it personally. Can you expand a little bit on why you said that? Paul, perhaps, our Pakistani friends, especially the spokesperson of their ruling party, may want to hear you expand on that a little.
Well, I would go back to what I said first, and that is that the United States and India are the two largest democracies in the world, and their common values as democracies puts them at odds with authoritarian systems, be they in Pakistan or in China. And the movement to isolate China that's been referred to several times in this discussion is part of that. It's clearly the case that the United States would like to have a good relationship with Pakistan. There is, looking down the pike, the possibility of north-south trade routes going through Pakistan into Central Asia and to Russia, and beyond that to Europe, and then south to India. that would require a very different Pakistan than the one we see now. But it is clearly the case that the relationship that the United States had developed with Pakistan over the last 25 to 30 years has been based on gaining access to Afghanistan, being able to move materiel on land across Pakistani territory. When that is no longer there, there's going to be a very large void. And unless Pakistan changes its approach, simply indicating that it has contacts with the Taliban is going to be insufficient to keep American attention, interest, and support at the level that it's been in the past. That is why I suggested that the American withdrawal from Afghanistan inevitably leads to a situation where Pakistan is less important, less central to American thinking in the subcontinent. And that in and of itself, given the size of relationships, economic and especially as democracies between the United States and India, means that there's going to be a tilt in the other direction. It's simply playing out of what is a large geopolitical shift, the tilt away from Europe as the center of conflict to looking at China as the greatest challenge for the future. That makes India more important by definition. The American pullout from Afghanistan makes Pakistan less important by definition. Because that's so, this is not a complicated algebra, and it's almost certain that you will see a pulling back from American support for Pakistan and growing opportunities for expansion of relations between the United States, the Western democracies, and India.
But Paul, you know, Western democracies, United States, India, France, and the economic powers coming together is natural. But one more thing, Vijay, I want your comment on it, and then I'll go to Atman also. One more thing, Vijay. The whole world is getting fed up with Pakistan, including China. And there has been a very significant development. Abdul Samad, I see your hand go up there. Vijay, earlier today, China has given a clear warning to Pakistan. And this is breaking news. China has told Pakistan, we have invested a lot of money in CPEC projects, and you must ensure safety of our workers and our investments. Otherwise, there will be no further investment in Pakistan. It's a very clear message. And you know what happened? There was a bus blast in Khyber Pakhtoon. 9 Chinese died. The Chinese are fed up, and they are saying no more investment till the security of our economic investments and our workers is first ensured. Vijay, you know, what does this mean? Abdul Samad will want to respond to you, but why don't you tell him first?
I think Pakistan is a failed state, and everyone who deals with Pakistan learns it. Some of us learned it very early. Some of us, those who have not learned, will learn it the other way. But Chinese are also not doing any charity by investing in Pakistan. They have done similar things in many countries, including Sri Lanka, where the debt burden goes up so high that these countries cannot even pay the interest, and they simply acquire those assets. And that is the same trick I suspect that Chinese will play to Pakistan. So there are basically two dirty games. Two dirty players are playing games with each other. All of us should only watch it and be careful about these games.
Absolutely. Abdul Samad is on. Gaurav will respond to Abdul Samad. See, Mr. Samad, where will you go now?
Can I say something?
You know the Chinese warning to you. You know the way America is dealing with you. You know India's equation with you. Yeah, please. We really want to know. Gaurav, after
things you have pointed out that can be tackled on the ministerial level between the China and Pakistan. But in my understanding and in my honest opinion, while I was listening to the guest from the USA, In my understanding, I mean, America needs India more than India needs America, because India is the only country in the Quad countries which share the borders with the China, and America want India to deter China in Indo-Pacific and on the land borders. But I don't think that India is going as far as America want India to play a vital role to deter the China, because the trade difference between the trade difference of America India and China India is $11 billion, and which will surpass by sooner. I mean, in a few months or a year later, China will become the biggest partner of the India. So I don't think that that's the reason.
No. You need, Abdul Samad. There is one correction. Please understand what India is. First of all, you need to understand we have overtaken the United States of America. Understand, when I'm saying we are going to be a superpower, Gaurav, we have overtaken the United States of America to become the second most sought after manufacturing destination globally. Right? Global manufacturers are shifting options. Supply chains are moving away from China, and they're all moving where? They're all moving, Gaurav, to India. So the growing significance and power of India, Abdul, I don't expect you to understand. Yes, we are the only country who have militarily had a standoff with China, and we pushed them back, Gaurav. That's huge. What was referred to earlier by Paul as well, I think, and Dove, that we have fought the Chinese and we've beaten them back. That's very, very, very significant, Gaurav. Right? The whole world noticed. The Chinese wanted to push in Ladakh. What happened? Gaurav is on air. We'll take that away. What happened? We pushed them back. Which other country in the world besides India, Gaurav, in a military confrontation, head to head, soldier to soldier, gun to gun has pushed back China in recent decades? Only India.
No, there is no comparison of China and India.
No, absolutely, Arnab. I think you're very right when you make this point that it's only India, A, among the Quad that shares a border with China, and B, India is the one who's shown the gumption. They tried it twice, Arnab. They tried it at Doklam and they tried it in East Ladakh area, and both times the Chinese were pushed back. So it's not that America wants us to do something, even we want to do the same thing, because China is predatory. And Arnab, one minor point, just for everybody's interest here, we keep on saying that Joe Biden has not called Imran Khan. Joe Biden has not called Imran Khan. That's just half the story. In the past 20 months, neither has Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping, with whom, China with whom they share a relationship sweeter than honey, higher than the Himalayas and deeper than the oceans. The Premier of China has not called Imran Khan for the past 20 months, I beg your pardon. And the CPAC is at an absolute standstill. There is nothing going on in CPAC. So it's not just Joe Biden, it's also Xi Jinping. Nobody likes Pakistan, Arnab.
Okay, last word to Mr. Trivedi from Washington. Mr. Trivedi, I just want you to look ahead a little bit. The Quad is happening. There's a very serious, engagement at New York. Prime Minister Modi is going to be speaking at the UNGA. What is the significance of this visit? It's Prime Minister Modi's first post-COVID, foreign policy engagement. If I can say post-COVID at all. That's ironical, but yes.
From a U.S. perspective, it's an incredibly important visit, a very critical engagement. It's an opportunity to highlight how much progress has been made, really remarkable advancements on defense and security issues, intelligence cooperation, counterterrorism. We're going from strength to strength in the relationship. And we're really taking advantage of the strategic convergence of views that are there between the US and India in the Indo-Pacific region. And as I think Dove and others have mentioned, a lot of that is dealing with a more assertive, more aggressive neighbor to India's north. And so the cooperation is really reaching new heights. At the same time, the fact that we're talking about the world's two largest democracies is vitally important in the relationship. It's not just about our shared security interests, it's also about the values that we have in common, our two societies, the 4 million Indian Americans who are playing an increasingly influential role across US and Indian society, serving as a bridge, the richness of our ties in education, hundreds of thousands of Indian students coming here every year to study, the work we do together on public health, on climate change, which is a very important issue for both our peoples. A lot of energy has been invested by both governments on the climate change issue. But I think it just shows the importance that the US attaches to India, the great work we're doing together on emerging technology standards within the Quad. And India is increasingly a preferred partner of the United States, and that's reflected in the respect and the attention that the Indian government is receiving today during the big visit.
Yeah, I think, well, that's very well put, Atman, and I thank you all so very much. Viewers, want to remind you that tomorrow, by the way, on the other side, we have a 17-minute clip of the conversation between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. We'll play that right after the break. And tomorrow's the crucial day. Prime Minister is flying down to New York. He's addressing the UNGA. And tomorrow we will be back with a special Saturday edition of the debate as the Prime Minister addresses the UN General Assembly after the Quad meeting. So look forward to meeting you tomorrow evening. Till then, ladies and gentlemen, the continuous coverage continues. See you tomorrow. Good night for now and goodbye.